You're listening to A Creative Excuse, presented by Echo Amano. Our next event is an opening by artist Terran Last Gun, the artist you're about to hear on this podcast. You can learn more about Terran's work at terranlastgun.com, and our opening is Friday, May 31st, 6 to 8 p.m. Come on out and check out the new work. It'll be a great time. We'll have snacks. That's all, and enjoy this episode with Terran Last Gun.
Good, so.
Cool. And how many of those?
Each one, well, two of them are probably an addition of 5, and then one of them is only an addition of 3. So pretty small, just because they take so long to do and so much ink and everything. But
Right. And how many pieces? How many of the large ones?
so those ones, there's 3. Those 3 are done, and I'm if I can, I'm trying to do one more.
Mm-hmm.
I have this full red sheet of paper ready to go, and I'm just wanted to get those done first and have them sort of ready to go. I still have to title them too, and
Yeah.
I feel like all of that part of, once they're finished, once they're flat, you know, the title, the edition, figuring out how many I want in it, did they all turn out? Because sometimes, you know, there'll be slight one that didn't really turn out, and which happened actually with that purple, the first image, the purple one. There was a color I used and I just didn't like it, and so I printed on top of that one, and you can see a thin bar of yellow behind
Kinda peeks
it.
out.
So most likely that'll become an artist proof of its own.
Yeah.
And that's what's cool about printmaking, I guess. And you know, you're working with all these multiple originals, and you're able to turn it into an artist proof if you want, you know,
Right.
and have the limited edition, but then also these ones that didn't quite make it, but they're still good.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing I've really liked about this medium.
Yeah. Is it hard to title your work?
Yeah, definitely. It takes me forever. I mean, I have all these notebooks, and I'll write down all these things, or like keywords, or just a word that comes to mind from looking at it, and then I'll break it down from there and
Right.
slowly figure out something that feels right in terms of what I'm feeling from that particular work.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I feel like that's a process in itself. And then, you know, then I'll sleeve them all up, cut foam core, title right on the back of the foam core, the titles and information. So it's just, this entire process all the way to the end.
Right. Yeah, I guess I just imagine, like, and we'll get to kind of the subject matter, but I would imagine with, you know, really abstracted, simple imagery, like, I mean, it probably would be harder to title that kind of work.
Yeah, no. Well, I think, especially with these works, they're not based on landscape. They're based on this other thing that we can get into, and I have some images to show you.
Oh, cool. Yeah, well, let's back up a little bit. We're actually recording, so we got that as a little intro. But thank you so much for doing this.
Definitely.
I've been a fan of your work since I first saw it, and I'm really stoked to be able to work together on this show coming up. And
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So you're originally from Montana?
Yep, I'm originally from Browning, Montana.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Scampi Piikani. That's the name of my tribe. But most people know us by Blackfeet.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was born and raised in Browning, which is the seat of government for my tribe.
Mm-hmm.
And very rural, right up against the Rocky Mountains, so right in the rolling hills, and then to the east, south, and north, it's all plains. So just to describe the landscape a little, definitely inspired by all of that. So
Were your parents artists? Did you grow up around artists?
yeah, my dad's an artist. He has been doing art his whole life, and so I've definitely been around that. And his work is all based on definitely cultural narratives, a lot of warriors that did different things for our tribe and got different gifts, I guess you could call them. So he focuses on that and definitely uses our geometric style along with more sort of realistic or representational type imagery.
Mm-hmm.
But
like
I'd never
portraiture or?
A little bit, yeah. And he's a ledger artist, a painter and a ledger artist, contemporary ledger artist. And I never felt like I was going to be an artist, even though my dad was an artist and I was around it. And it wasn't until I came to IA that I took it serious and started to take classes. But before that, I was doing creative things. Definitely, I've always felt creative, wanting to be hands-on and just create things that I wasn't seeing, I guess, around or in terms of art or, I grew up dancing at powwows, and so I feel like that's sort of an art form. I never thought of it growing up like that, but now I look back at it and think of it as, this definitely performance type piece. And because I danced the chicken dance, the prairie chicken dance, and so that's an imitation of the bird during mating season, and they really cock their head and puff up their chest and ruffle their feet to sort of get their attention, the girl's attention. And so, and it, we say it originates amongst my tribe, but there's different various styles of it. So
yeah, did that manifest in other ways as well? Creativity?
For sure the designs of your regalia, and
were you involved in creating it?
Yeah. I always try to have say in what I would want in terms of asking someone in my community who specializes in like beading or material applique. And so I would come up with a basic design and let them sort of take over from there based on that. And so there's a lot of colors within the powwow world, and so I've for sure, people choose certain colors, 2 colors usually as their main standout colors, and so I think that definitely influenced my color exploration and trying to figure out what I feel like works with each other in terms of these certain color combinations.
And then did you get into photography before you started doing printmaking? Yeah,
well, I had always done sort of amateur photography, candid type stuff, but at II I started to take classes and take it a little bit more serious, and I was really interested in sort of these I guess staged photography, but using different props, and I eventually started building my own props out of cardboard. And so I was building these headpieces that were inspired by different cultural figures in my tribe. Napi, he's one of them. He's sort of like a trickster / sub-creator, I say, and there's always like a moral of the story when you hear Napi stories, and so I was always intrigued by those types of stories, and imagining what he might look like with these blocky looking head figures. And then I created if the earth were a person, what would she look like? And so created another headpiece that was based on the Eni or the bison, and so it had these horns. And then Napi's headpiece was based on sort of this owl's face, but also a roach where there's the spikes on top. And so that was my kind of stepping into photography, but also sculptural forms and building them myself and thinking 3-dimensional.
Yeah. And what brought you to IAI?
My dad told me about the museum studies program.
Okay.
So it was.
So you didn't come with the intention of like making objects?
No,
I
wanted to, and I still want to. I wanted to be involved in museums in terms of how can we, I don't know, just engage with these cultural objects that are no longer in our communities, that are in museums, different institutions. And it was a trip to Canada to view 5 Blackfoot war shirts that were acquired in 1841 through the Hudson Bay. And then they were brought back to, I think it was London, because it was the University of Oxford who eventually accepted them from this donor or someone who gave them to them.
Probably through questionable means.
Yeah, and eventually some Blackfoot elders from Canada, through these scholars or these researchers that were doing a project based on them, those researchers started showing them the photos of them and was like curious to hear what they had to say. And they were really old and definitely very geometric figures, symbolism within them. And they asked if they could come back to visit at least and be brought back over. And they worked that out. It took a long time, but eventually they were able to bring them back on, not repatriated, but just on this like loan type deal. And they invited us up, the Amskampi Piikani, because in Canada there's the Apadosi Piikani, which are the northern Piikani, Siksika, and Kainai. And then there's us, and all collectively we're referred to as the Blackfoot Confederacy, or Niitsitapi, which means real people. And it was only able to go to Canada and be able to be viewed by them, but they did invite us, and we went up, and it was really a very, empowering moment to be able to feel them, touch them, smell the buckskin still after so many years, and they still had this strong aroma. And it was all quill work, so this was before beads, and they were hairlock shirts, so they had either animal or human hairlocks, and ceremonial shirts that had to be transferred to, they were like sort of thinking in terms of military. It was a high honor to get something like that. And so not everyone had those. And and not everyone can go to Canada from my community either. So it just really stood out to me in terms of like, I want to be able to have these within my own community. Right. I mean, it would be so cool if those shirts could have came down across the border, but it just was an even, much harder obstacle to in terms of paperwork, legal, everything. So that was getting me into the museum, interested in the museum field. I was already interested in Blackfoot culture, history, ceremonies, going to them, the language. I went to the immersion school when I was a kid, and museum field just felt right in terms of my interests. And then eventually all of that I applied to art and creating work based on these stories, and making sure it was continuing on, but also including my own style, modernizing it, but trying to keep it elevated and sophisticated, and not make it look cheesy or there's a lot of artists from Montana and who do native work, and it's real realistic, and I think that's good work too, and it's continuing on these stories. But I was more interested in the symbols and these more just like the symbols on the war shirts or the painted lodges, or just parfleche bags and different imagery that my tribe was doing. And so I wanted to use those in a minimal way through exploring color and shape and all of that too. So
yeah, I usually end this podcast by asking if there's like a piece of work or an exhibition that changed your trajectory. So I think you already answered that question. So you got to think of another one for the end. When you said, like cheesy or whatever, like, do you mean like kind of a like overly romanticized sort of vision, or
yeah, definitely romanticized,
like really romanticizing the past, or is that kind of what you mean?
I definitely think romanticized work is a good way to describe it. Like the end of the trail figure where the warrior is all, sloped over and just people with war bonnets, and I don't know, it's just, I don't, Western art, I guess. Montana's really big on Western type art and realistic looking stuff, but I feel like that just keeps us in the past. And I'm not interested in seeing that type of work. I'm interested in seeing this energized, refresh, new indigenous look. And that, I feel definitely I got that type of influence here in Santa Fe and working at Mokna and going to II, really showed me this world of contemporary indigenous artists, specifically indigenous contemporary work. And I just felt like people were really pushing boundaries, and I wanted to do the same and be in that sort of lane of thinking differently about what indigenous work looks like and what just especially here in the United States, I feel like Canadians are really pushing it, but here in the United States, there's just, I don't know how to describe it, but I'm just trying to have something new and something that I want to see. Right.
Totally. And there's a lot of that in Santa Fe, of course, and I imagine, like, even for outsiders, like, I remember hearing a comment about Heidi Brandau's work when I was over at Form of Concept. Somebody said, like, oh, that's not native work. And it's like I didn't even know it. I hardly knew what to say. Yeah. And it was just like, I know that's not a joke, but you got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's like it doesn't fit that romanticized narrative. And I can imagine that, I don't want to criticize anybody's artistic and creative, loves, but like I could imagine how that kind of work can continue to promote stereotypes.
Yeah, no, I agree. I feel like some things are really trendy, and I think some things sell more than others, and maybe that's why people continue to do work
and
like
we gotta
that.
Feed our families, so it's like, I get it. I've certainly worked around artists that, did the same thing over and over again because it sold, and it's fine. You got to make a living somehow.
Yeah.
But I think the question is does it get into the bones of what it is to be an artist? Is what does it actually say about yourself, or what does it actually say about what's going on in the world right now? And in most of those cases, it doesn't really say a whole lot. Except, like, I don't know. This is an old trope that we're just repeating.
No, I definitely feel that it is repetitious, and at least I think just going back to for myself being here in Santa Fe, in this community, I'm really grateful for how much art there is and how much new art there is, and the indigenous scene here. I'm just constantly inspired in seeing all of this work out here, and I really would want to bring my work back home, but it's just challenging sometimes, and it's so far, and financially, I would rather be stable before going back up. But I really want to make my work accessible to my community, and I have been doing a few things. I've done one mural back home, and did a few sort of class presentations with the Cutswood Language Immersion School there, and that's where I went to school. So that was really a great opportunity to go back there and actually speak with my former language instructor and have her look at my work and just hear what she has to say about it.
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
And we even came up with ways of describing it, I guess, which was really something for me to be like, oh my God, like how this is so cool to bring back this something that wasn't my original path and share it with my teacher and have her help me come up with ways to describe it was really a powerful moment. So, that's awesome. And I want to be able to do that more, and that was such a short trip. But yeah, it's been on the back of my mind, like I need to go back up there and figure out how I can further incorporate my art but with language. And so that's another long-term type goal, is to work with my community in that way.
Right. That's awesome. So you got to IAI, started with museum studies, and then what happened?
Yeah, then one of my instructors was like, you guys, talking to us class, that we should take an art class, a studio arts class, to get the other feel of it, the creating side of it. And I thought that was a great idea. I was really just felt like I wanted to take a class, but I was maybe holding back just out of fear. But once he said that, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And I took color theory, and it was painting, which I wasn't really into, but I was able to produce things that I didn't think I could, and eventually it led to intro to printmaking, and I just stuck with that once I discovered printmaking and how cool it was, and then I took screen printing, and I felt like that was the one I really wanted to do because it was so fast and so just a quicker way of producing prints, and clean and graphic and blocky shapes and saturated colors. So after that, I took like 6 printmaking courses and just decided to stick with it, and eventually felt like, yeah, this is something I want to do, and finally felt like I could say, like, I'm an artist. I was like, okay, I'm an artist, and I'm gonna try this out and see what happens. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been great. I love having this medium to, of course, have creative expression, but it's also, in terms of as a career path, a little bit more flexible. I like that about it, and just being independent are some things that stick out to me in terms of being an artist and being on this sort of path.
Yeah, and it's awesome and there's this drumming in the background. I'm sure that's carrying over. It's awesome that that printmaking hooked you so fast. Like, you didn't have like this long journey of like finding whatever your medium was. It was like, yep, that's it.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, I think I would say I like order. I'm somewhat organized. I mean, I can have like a cluttered area, but I definitely like to be organized. And so this printmaking process, learning the traditional techniques and the way to sign and having editions and curing your work, making sure it's clean, I just thought that was really something that fit my qualities of just my characteristics and how I am in terms of my own life. And then I just applied all those traditional printmaking ways of doing things to serigraphs, and serigraphs are still a printmaking, but it's just a whole different way, equipment, everything that we're using. But yeah, I just applied it all to that, and I thought it was such a cool idea to have your original image, but then multiples of it. And so over time, over the years, I've just continually kept my number ones, And so I have this like nice body of work,
Cool.
visual record of, you know, my work. I guess I was thinking like I'm gonna have a retrospective like way down there, way down the way.
Hold on to those ones.
Yeah, I better have some of these original works that, you know, I was able to make. But yeah, I really enjoyed the whole process, from prepping the paper, cutting it down or tearing it down, to doing your image. I use Rubylith film to cut my shapes out, and transparency sheets and opaque zig pens that basically act just like a Rubylith. So whatever you draw, it will become an image, a screen print image. So I work very much in a manual way in terms of using those as my materials. And yeah, and then just over time I've gotten better at the printing process of it, the registration, and pushing the medium a little more in terms of my full bleeds. Now I think that's something I really like to do, and I feel is sort of, I guess, signature to my work. And so yeah, just trying to work with this paper and the whole process, and keep pushing it and see if I can just learn more from it as well. And then all the way to the end, to once it's done, you know, flattening it, heat pressing it, signing, edition, sleeving, and then having it all ready for markets or whatever.
So there's a lot of like order in the whole process. There's a lot of steps.
Yeah.
And that takes precision, right? And I think, you know, if you're not familiar with printmaking, you know, people think, oh, so you press print on the computer and then it goes, you know, and I think, you know, one of the things that I'm interested in doing is, you know, just helping people understand that it is such a handmade, hands-on, detail-oriented process, you know, and to pull a print, even if it's your second one, you know, it takes just as much, you know, precision and care and attention to pull that number 2 and the number 3. You know? That, you know, they are original prints.
Yeah.
You know.
No, yeah, definitely having the, like you said, being able to hand pull it and for all of them, and just to see your you know, what you're able to produce is, I think it's just a great feeling to have that, and then, you know, exploring this color and having these different color palettes come to life, for me, is very exciting. Every time I lift up the screen to see the last layer, I'm always like, oh, it looks so good, or it looks not so good. Right. Most of the time it has been turning out good for me. So
yeah,
and the bad ones are always, you know, just a learning experience to take the good from it. So
right. When you said you finally said you could think of yourself as an artist, was there an experience, or can you pinpoint anything that sort of helped you make that jump to like identify yourself as an artist?
I don't know. I think it was just a number of things. I was just like, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to try these school markets. I started out with those, and that was my first time selling work. Then I felt like, wow, I can actually produce something and then sell it. And that was 2013. I did my first market, and each year I continued to do those school markets. Usually the winter market and the powwow are the ones I would do. And then I started to apply for artist opportunities. I got a fellowship from the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture called the Goodman and Aspiring Artists Fellowship. And I think after receiving that award, I definitely started to feel like I was an artist. But I never threw it out there and was like, oh, I'm an artist and this is my work. And I just tried to, and I still do, I just keep it to myself. And eventually I started my own website. I started a social media artist page. But I wasn't really like, hey, check out these too. I just did it to get things rolling. And by the time I was you know, felt good and comfortable being an artist, I would have all these things behind me, and online presence and just different sort of skill sets. And so I graduated in 2016, and that fall I audited a screen printing course, and I was finally able to really just create work that I wanted to create. No class assignment, no do this or that. It was just my work. And I think that winter I was like, okay, now I'm for sure an artist. I want to do this. I want to try and see where this goes. And the museum stuff is definitely always on my mind. I do a lot of art handling, freelance, sort of installing, deinstalling work that I've been doing lately, and so that's sort of my way of staying connected in the museum realm in more of a contemporary art way. But my original idea was more older objects and cultural works, and how do we get those back somehow, or at least shown to people. So but yeah, I think it was a number of things that led up to me feeling confident in saying I'm an artist.
Yeah. See, it's taken me a long time to get to a place where I feel comfortable with whatever it is that I'm doing. Like, I don't know, I kind of feel like a producer or I guess a curator. Like it's taken me a long time to just like accept that. I don't know. It was when at the last gallery I was at, when we won the Best Gallery Award, the first place in the, that was like a really big moment for me. Not like getting the award, but just like, oh, people are resonating with this work. You know, because I mean, it's like I'm just putting it out there, and people tell you, oh, I like what you're doing, but to kind of like get that reflected back was really big for me. And I think that was one of the things that kind of said to me, like, oh, okay, maybe it's time to go out on your own now, you know. And not until like I had this kind of space, which is like I could do whatever I want and not ask permission. It's just like this free space where I can experiment, is where I feel like I'm really starting to just like get in that groove and being like, okay, great, this is my space. I can do what I need to do here. So that's awesome that it sounds like you kind of inhabited that identity really kind of quickly, honestly.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think just like I said, growing up feeling creative, I finally had somewhere to funnel all that creative energy into these producing prints. And and then slowly moving into photography and now painting. I think my family thought I would be home by now, but since I've taken on this, and there's way more opportunities here in Santa Fe, or just in the New Mexico and the Southwest in general, than there is in Montana right now for me. And I feel like I'm just in a sort of a still growing, still learning stage. And if I were to return home now, I don't know, I feel like I'm not complete in learning everything that I need to, and to be independent up there as an artist. I still feel not quite ready for that, but somehow I definitely want to stay connected, because my work is all based on my home and my culture. And so, I definitely want it to engage with my own people, and for them to see it and see what type of responses I would get from, the younger people, my peers, but mainly older elders. I would be really interested in hearing what they would say about some of my work, since I'm using these old symbols in a new way. I'm sure they would be very recognizable to them. And so that's another down the road. I want to have a show back in my community and just share my work with them, and do some type of public program, and have a dialogue with them as well. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, but for now I'm trying to keep that community mindset, happening here in Santa Fe and be engaged here and yeah, just trying to, I guess, just stay engaged with the community and active.
Yeah.
So.
And for those that haven't seen your work, recently it's kind of been sort of these minimal abstract landscapes almost. A lot of times there'll maybe be 3 shapes.
Yeah.
You know, very minimal, really bright saturated colors. I'll put, you can look at the Echomana website or look up Terran's website. Actually, would be better to see kind of a bigger overview of what he's been doing, what you've been doing.
Yep.
You're right here. So you talk about how Blackfoot symbology has entered the work and thinking about Blackfoot narrative kind of coming into the work. Can you talk a little bit about that and like maybe specifically how that flows into how the work appears?
Yeah, well, I definitely start my research, or my process starts with sort of researching and reading different books and publications that have been written about the Blackfoot. So I've collected a bunch of books now. I must have like 30 books just written on Blackfoot, and that includes all 4 tribes that are within the Confederacy. But it's always been the painted lodges that, growing up, seeing them at our annual gatherings, the powwow, and just seeing them through archival imagery taken in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Specifically, Walter McClintock, who was with my tribe back in the early 1900s, he took nearly 2,000 photos, and I have his book here with me, actually. And
cool.
So I feel like I reference that material a lot, and also Blackfoot war art in terms of imagery on war shirts and even on lodges. They would tell their stories, or on animal hides. So as I'm interested in continually researching those and collecting books. Anything written on my tribe I try to collect. But I'm also interested in terms of art interests. I've always been drawn to pop art, opt art, geometric abstraction, and minimalism. I definitely feel drawn to those art movements, and they definitely influence my work. So yeah, I collect books based on those too. So I like to collect books, and I have this pretty nice library now that I've been able to create and grab, different references and get lost in one book and read a section and close it and then grab a different one. And yeah, just with all the books I've collected from my own tribe, I feel like there's always something in there I'm discovering that totally inspires me and leads me on this sort of, in terms of the creating the work based on that, this, I guess, intuitive process where I'm not set on an image. I'll go based on one color and then the next color, and then I'll start to think about imagery. And so it's very much listening to the material, listening to the colors, and also taking in the research and sketches. I'll do small sketches, and I have a ton of color pencils, so I'm constantly working with color through that way at first, and then it'll go to the ink.
Would you say that there's like a distillation process? Like, I imagine because your work is so minimal, I could imagine that there's like maybe a contemplation around like how little is needed to get across what I want to put on here. Does that come into it at all, or do you feel like you start out minimal?
I think I have in mind less is more. And I feel over the last few years, like number three colors is a really nice spot, or 4 colors is always really nice too. But with these new works, I have 5 colors, and at first they felt almost too much but I don't know, today they've totally grown on me, and I'm just like, oh wow, these are really nice, real dynamic, real lot going on, but still minimal looking, and using these bright colors and saturated colors. So yeah, I think I go back and forth in terms of real minimal works to these real, I think the most colors I've done so far is 8 color print, and it turned out really nice. But yeah, I go back between those, I guess 2 and 7 are the colors I like to work with. And then in terms of editions, depending on the size of the paper, it'll be anywhere from an edition of 2 to, I think the most I've ever printed was an edition of 40. But I keep it pretty small and limited, and I like that just because then there's, and even for the collector, you know, there's not this huge amount out there of this same image. And so yeah, all of that is definitely on my mind.
And how do you paint? Is it similar to your work with printmaking?
Yeah, definitely still learning with painting, just because I haven't done it a whole lot, but I've done a few murals. My first mural I did was in 2016 with Eliza Naranjo Morse at the Mokna Sculpture Garden. And I had never done a mural or very much painting, but I was definitely open to the challenge and wanted to work with Eliza and learn something new. So ever since that mural and working with that and on this large scale, I was inspired to work with painting and still with murals as well. And so I've done a few others since then. But I'll start with the main color. This one painting, I painted the entire canvas one color, and then I did the next color on top. The same process I do with printmaking, but it took so long to cover that bottom layer with the second color that I was like, I'm never doing that again. I'm just gonna tape off this area, or just, you know, paint this area only. So yeah, that's what I mean by I'm still like sort of learning with the material and working with it.
Does it like thematically, or the subject matter, does it look like if somebody saw one of your paintings would be like, oh yeah, I recognize that?
I think so. Yeah, I feel well, I've been trying to focus on these diptych paintings that I did one last year, and I just really liked how it turned out, and it was a new way of looking at my work in terms of 2 canvases to create one image. And this definitely based on landscape. It was just a flat scenery, and I really wanted to do more of that. And the only reason I had those canvases and did that was some of my friends here in town, they really like my work, they really like my prints, but they were like, you should try painting. Your work would, you know, translate to a painting so well, and they're easier to get around, and, you know, they would last longer. So I was like, maybe I'll think about it. And so they went and bought me canvases.
Nice. They were into it.
Yeah, and
do this.
Dropped it off with Samantha, my partner, at her work, because they knew where she worked. They didn't even let me know. And Samantha came home with all these canvases, and I was like, oh wow. So I was like, all right, well, I might as well try it, since, you know, people are really trying to encourage me to do this. So I was like, okay, I'll try it, and I really liked it. So I've been wanting to return to that, but with the studio access I have right now being limited, I've just focused on prints. And so this summer, basically next month, I'll be getting back into working with paintings again. So.
And do you feel like the medium conveys the work in a different way? Like the process, of course, is completely different. So it's different for you and how you make it. Do you feel like that, you know, when it's up on the wall for the viewer, does it convey the work in a different way through paint versus a print?
I think so. I mean, I felt, because I had worked with prints so long, I valued my prints way more. And when I created the painting, it was so much bigger than my work that I was like, how do I even value this? Or I didn't know I'm still learning about that too.
Yeah.
And once it sold too, I felt really, it was a weird feeling too, because it wasn't like my prints where I kept number one. It was gone, you know.
Right.
And at least it was to a former collector, but I felt weird about that too. And I feel like that now when creating a painting. It's like, this is the only one. And but yeah,
there's definitely that perception of, you know, like painting is generally taken more seriously than printmaking. You know, it's for, you know, I guess probably a lot of, you know, Western classical reasons. But do you think that's part of it? Like, I guess I wonder, like, is the paint doing something different than the ink on paper? You know what I mean? Like, is the color, like, is the light reflecting off of it differently? Like, what does it say to somebody? Like, if you did the exact same piece on paper versus a canvas.
I think they definitely have different feels to them. And I feel with prints, sometimes definitely people seem like they don't value them as much either. And so, yeah, I can see where the painting would get more attraction or some attention, you know, rather than the prints. But I think that's why I started to do the full bleeds, because it really made the paper and the print look painterly like and full. And yeah, and in my presentation too, you know, I want I really take care of them like babies, and I don't want them to get dinged or anything on them until they leave my hands. And so I'm constantly trying to just keep everything super nice and a very nice presentation, visual presentation, by using these archival sleeves and foam core. And so I've learned over time, just from looking at other printmakers and how they're displaying their works and stuff. And I noticed too, though, not a lot, but just some do paintings as well, and it's interesting to see their work on both types of mediums as well. But I definitely get why people, even my dad does paintings a lot, and you know, you don't need all this equipment and special equipment to do them. You can just do it right at home in your own studio, garage, whatever. So I think that's good to have as a backup for myself. But I'm really I would rather have my own studio in the future and really, I guess, focus on continually sort of pushing the boundaries with the medium, and then also my own work, continually refining it and always experimenting. I think that's important, to experiment and learn from those mistakes or failures that are moments that you feel like are failures, to just take the good from those and keep moving on. Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, it's interesting because, like, printmaking, there's such a lot of technical knowledge that's involved in making it. So it's just funny to think about why, you know, people value it less, you know. But cool. So we've got the show coming up at Mano, opening May 31st. This will probably come out the Tuesday before that.
Okay.
And is there anything else you want to plug? You've got another market in May?
Yeah, well, the Native Treasures, I'm not sure this will be out by then, but that's Memorial Day weekend. Okay. And then I'm doing Native Pop in July, which is in Rapid City, South Dakota. Native Pop is people of the plains is what that stands for. And then this will be my first year doing Indian Market in August, so I'm really excited for that. And I have a show in Gallup, New Mexico at Indigenous Loom Gallery. August 10th is the opening for that. So yeah, those are my upcoming events that I have going on.
Cool. And I don't know if you have another one, but if you have like another experience with art, whether it was a class or a specific piece of art, even an album that kind of changed your trajectory or made you think about art in a different way? And you had the great example with the shirts up in Canada.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that comes to mind?
Well, there's this painting my dad gave me, and it's still back home in Browning. And it's this Piikani man that has a business type suit on. And he has a straight up war bonnet, though, which is unique to my tribe. And then above his left shoulder is the Gukumiki Sun, which is the moon, and then on his right is Natusi, which is sun. And that piece has always been like one of my favorite pieces that he's ever done, and he gave it to me too, and it just feels like, I don't know, something I'm like aspiring to be or look up to, and but having the sun and moon watch over you. And so for Blackfoot, the sun is the creator, his wife is the moon, and their son is Morning Star. And so those I use throughout my work a lot. I use the sun disc so much, and the moon and Morning Star, and they're always represented as discs. And so I think that's why I use these circles and polka dots a lot. But that was one piece, and that's one that has, I'm always so really cool. Like seeing it. I really want to bring it down, but I just haven't had a chance to go get it. And then another piece that has continually inspired me is Evolution by Alan Hauser, and that one sits on II's campus in the dance circle, and it's very geometric, hard edge, black, stark looking sculpture that I feel just is, he was such a master artist, Alan Hauser, and he could do everything, all different mediums. And this particular piece, though, I feel is, and works similar to it, that were very abstract looking. We're really pushing what it means to be indigenous art and what it could look like. And I think the original name of that piece was Surreos, and he did an edition of them. I don't know how many of them he did, but the one he gifted to II campus, I overheard from the Alan Hauser, or the Hauser archivist, was that, he specifically wanted the one on campus to be named Evolution. And I don't know why, but to me it just seems like, we're, as these young native students are coming to this campus, this is something that we can evolve to have our work look like, and continually push boundaries within our own artistic practices. And so, yeah, just all the different shapes of it, I've constantly been inspired. I'm always drawn to it, intrigued. It inspired a lot of my work from last year. All the imprint work with the sort of mountain looking shape on it was partly inspired by Ellen Hauser's piece out there. And those are two pieces that are like some of my favorite artworks,
That's
out
awesome.
There. So
cool.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah.
Terran.
Thank you for having me.
I'm looking forward to the show.
Yep. Me too. I hope you guys all come out to see it. So.